Welcome back to the Rugby Rundown, our weekly news podcast with Jan de Koning. Very experienced rugby journalist, more than 40 years, and plugged into rugby as anything. And last week's episode, where we talked about where the Rassie is sitting behind Ruan's departure to Japan, shot the lights out. So thank you for watching that. Jan, it also did very well on your channel.
Yes, indeed, MV. It was quite a popular podcast, and as usual, when we chat in depth, and we've got a bit of insight that your average Joe doesn't have, which helps. That's what makes a podcast so nice, and that's why I enjoy doing this.
So that's actually something I wanted to talk to you about. The fact that you're so experienced, like you've got insight that most of us don't have. I want to talk to you about agents, rugby agents in general. And it surprised me, firstly, how powerful agents are in the South African rugby landscape. Just tell me what they are, what they do, and how it works.
So the agents themselves, there's a variety. There's some really good agents, some really bad agents. And at the moment, you've got the guys that are the solo. I don't know if it's better with that. They've got a company, but it's a guy that breaks away from another agency. So there's agencies. So some of the more established agents will have agencies, and they'll have a lot of agents work for them. So I'm going to give anybody free advertising, or we probably are, yeah. So the reality is these guys have got an agency and different agents who look after players. So let's take an example, and I know I've had some feedback from some agents who get very upset with me, or why do we give Rock Nation so much publicity? Because Rock Nation looks after the players in a very professional manner. So they will take a player. Let's start with Sia. This is where it all started, Rock Nation and Sia. So they took Sia, and Sia gets the best treatment. He gets global exposure. He gets flown to America to see NBL and NBA matches and socialize, and his face is there. So they build his brand. He gets he goes to Liverpool and he watches matches there. When Klopp was still there, he's a good friend of Klopp. So he would sit there in a box, and people would know who's Sia. So they help him build his brand, but they also help him build a life beyond rugby. So they don't just sit there and take their money and like some agents do, flip players from one union to, because the more they flip, the more commission they get. The higher the salary, the more commission they get. So some agents look after the players and some agents don't. They will just flip players and move them around because they can get more money. So when I say there's some good agents and there's some bad agents, I don't mean that they bad people or bad persons. I don't think they look after the players as well as they should. So when people start complaining about Rock Nation and that they only take specific players, they take players that they know it's got a good potential, a good profile, and will become a global star because they can take them to the global market. So they can take a Cheslin Kolbe and market him all over the place. Most South Africans will know Cheslin for a specific cell phone ad and a few other things. Whereas Cheslin Kolbe he's got his own company that he runs that's going to serve him after rugby. Same with Sia. They've got a company, and they've been busy set up to run a company after, so there's life after. So I think, to quote Michael Jorma, the Rock Nation's boss, to quote him, he says they set them up so that he can do what he wants to do after rugby, not what he has to do. And that's like me and you, maybe our pension funds are not so lekker, and we have to carry on working because we have to do what we want, what we have to do. We do what we have to do because we still need an income. Whereas Sia and those guys, when they're done with rugby, they will have a steady income. They will have, and that's what Rock Nation does different. So they in my view, on another level. So something interesting I want to share with you. We will soon have our first black player agent in South Africa. A gentleman called Thamsanqa Mokwana, or commonly referred to as Mr. T, is a very good friend of Sia. Now, he's applied to become a player agent. Up till now, and this will shock people, up till now, there's not a single black player agent in South Africa. He's going to be the first one. And why? He's a recruitment agent for Rock Nation. up till now, he couldn't handle the players himself. He had to go recruit players. So if he sees Pete, they just signed us in Pete, Rock Nations. So he brings him on board, recruits him, but then he has to hand him over to an agent who's a registered, a qualified agent. He's now going to sit, so he can, on behalf of Rock Nations, he can handle that play. So if he gets a young scrum half or a fly half or a prop, he can then manage that player himself as an agent. So I think that's what Rock Nation does better. And a lot of people will say, oh, they only pick. Yeah, of course they pick. Some agents just take whatever they can get because maybe they're not as high profile. Maybe they're not been in the game as long as some of these guys. Rock Nation comes from a very different background. They've been involved in America. They know what marketing in sport is like. They know how to manage it globally and how to run an agency globally. And I think that's where a lot of our agents, rather than feeling sour about how much publicity Rock Nation get or how much what Rock Nation does, rather take a leaf out of their book, grow your agency. Instead of whining to us and moaning to us because we give Rock Nation publicity, grow your agency, sell your agency, sell your players like Rock Nation does. And I think that's the big difference. So when I say there's good agents and there's bad agents, or let's say there's good agents and not so good agents, that's the difference. It's because some only look after their players during their player career, and after that it's up to the player what they do. And there's some classic cases of players who are bankrupt after they stop playing. Players that have to go start playing overseas just to get a pension fund, and there's classic cases of that as well. So I think the really good agents will make sure that the player is set for life after rugby, and the other agents may not be doing that, and the player will be left to his own devices after he stopped playing rugby.
You mentioned something that caught my attention. The fact you said he applied to be an agent. Is there some sort of a regulatory framework here? Or do they have to be registered? Do they have to have certain qualifications? SA Rugby makes us as journalists jump through hoops to be accredited. Does the same apply to an agent, or can I become an agent tomorrow, get a couple of players and start phoning around and see if I can secure them a contract?
Now, you have to be a registered agent. So yes, there is a process that has to be followed. So you have to sit the exam and all sorts of stuff. So it's not just a simple case of you start becoming an agent. It used to be like that, but it's now far better regulated, because there used to be some really rogue stuff out there. And players got burned badly by some agents. And I don't want to go into that too much or give examples, but there's well-documented cases of players being burned by agents. So now that's regulated, and you have to apply to SARA to be a registered or a agent, and you have to go through the process, and you have to sit for an exam, and then if you qualify, and then you get your license, and then you can start executing your duties as an agent, as a qualified agent.
You mentioned now the first black agent, but I spoke to Monja Gravenstein the other day, the first woman agent, and did she have to jump through hoops? Because she bumped into the patriarchy everywhere she turned. They didn't want a woman as an agent for rugby players, whether they're male or female. There seems to be quite a little bit of an old boys club going here.
I don't know if it's an old boys club, but it's certainly a setup that does not or did not favor women. And I think that's slowly changing. It's like women's rugby, I mean, I might not enjoy women's rugby because I don't think the skill levels are high enough, or, I might not enjoy some club rugby because I don't think the skill levels are high enough. So, but that's my choice. If I don't want to watch, but they still have the right to compete. So somebody needs to look after the women as well. And I don't think there's enough agents looking after women. Again, you will find that only the most high profile female players are looked after by agent, because agent can make money from them. But your average club player or your provincial player, and we now got this women's Super League in South Africa. Those players, there's 100 odd players that it's got no agents. They got no, what do they do? Do they go to the union and offer themselves? So of that, probably about 10 of them has got agents, and the rest are, so that's why you need female agents to start looking after those players and make sure, I know we got my players, so my players will look after the players, and they sign contracts, look after the contracts of the players. But the agent still needs to market the players, still needs to take player X to another union, or take a player X overseas, So, I mean, there's very few of our women players that go play, compared to the men, it's a drop in the ocean of the number of South African women players that go overseas. So you need agents to market these players and look after them. So remember, these women don't earn as much money as the men because the profile, there's not as much sponsorship, there's not as much television. Now it's a bit better now that we've reached the quarterfinals of the World Cup. So there's a bit more interest in women's rugby in South Africa. But you can look at the provincial competitions. Nobody goes and watches it. There's still, and somebody needs to market that. And you want to market the players, the female players, agent needs to go do that. And that's where your really good agents come in, and they can market these players and put them out there, get them some incomes, let them build up a portfolio of some sort, and set him up for life after rugby. And that's a big challenge for female agents, is to actually find a career path for these women other than just playing rugby.
Yeah, that's a good point. We actually had an interview with Libby Jansen van Rensburg last night. And what an interesting person she is. And we're going to be doing our best to promote some women's rugby. I don't necessarily agree with you about the quality of the rugby. Yes, I know it's not maybe right up there, but it's getting there. Under Swys, it's coming along and it leaps and bounds. So I'm looking forward to see where they can end up. So watch out for that video with Libby. I'm going to put the link up on the screen here. What a character. I was so impressed by her. So sorry, I got a bit digressed there, but she was so impressive. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about how powerful these agents are. And I've recently seen this in action. I spoke to somebody at a rugby organization. He got some bad news, and not 10 minutes later, the WhatsApp started flowing about possible replacements and possible deals being made. You talked about an old boys club, but there seems to be a network of interconnected individuals here. I mean, are the players leaking information? How does it work? How do the agents become aware of things? How do they know when to offer a player? How does that work?
Yeah, I'm sure that there is a network of agents, and part of that is that are they connected to my players, or are they connected to Saru, or that I'm not quite sure. But there are a network of agents, and they do speak. I mean, I speak to some of them, and they're very friendly, and I get on with them very well. So, because I respect them, and because it's their career path, and they got a job to do. But there is definitely a case, and I think to some extent, there's some naughty players that will definitely filter information through to agents, who then pass that on to whoever necessary. So if player X is looking for a move, you pass it on to his agent. There's a gap at the Lions, or maybe there's a gap at the Pumas, or or at the Sharks. Listen, the Sharks are losing a scrum off. Maybe the Sharks need we know that Grant Williams is going to Japan at the end of the season, so I'm sure the Sharks are getting quite a few calls or WhatsApps from the agents about scrum offs that's in the market.
Yeah, even Van Zyl is going there, isn't he? From Saracens at the end of the season?
Correct, yeah. But I'm sure they need of something a bit more younger. I mean, even Van Zyl's older than Grant Williams.
Yeah, always that you're going to say older than the mountains. No, man.
There's no mountains in Durban.
That's true. All right. We talk about the positive side of being an agent, but there's also a negative side. Last year, you and I spoke about the drama at the Stormers surrounding Ben Jason Dixon. And from what I remember, it was all driven by the agent. I'm not going to mention any names here, but when your agent, stirs up trouble, that causes a bit of an issue for the players as well. I mean, some agents are not welcome at some of the unions, for example. How does that affect the players?
It's when it's like anything else. If you get bad advice, and the player, so at this specific case, there was an opportunity for the player to go somewhere else, but he still had a contract. And the Stormers put their foot down and they said, no, he's not going. No matter whether you want to buy him out or not, he's not going. And I think he may have gotten some bad advice. Maybe it was a good opportunity for him at the time. Maybe he thought, oh, gee, I'm not going to get many more Springbok caps. I'm going to go while the strike when the iron's hot, while the iron's hot. So I just think sometimes, and I'm going to refrain from saying it's this specific case, but sometimes players get bad advice and then they make bad calls. That's like everything in life. You get bad advice and somebody says to you, no, but why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And then you try it and it doesn't work, So maybe I want to go into radio or I want to go into television and suddenly I appear before a camera and I don't look good in front of the camera. You know, I look like a old prune or something in
You've
front
got
of
a
the
face for radio.
Exactly. I've got a face for radio. And yeah, I sit in front of a camera. But the reality is, if somebody gives you advice and you follow it and it doesn't work out, it's my bad, you know, because I've followed your advice. And another person say, no, you've got a good writing style. Why don't you write a book? And then I'll say, yes, I need to find the time, you know, just do it, you know, and then you start doing it. And I've done a book and it didn't go as well. The book itself went well, but it wasn't a financial success. And in South Africa, books are very seldom financial successes, especially sports books. So, you know, that's how you can burn your finger. That's bad advice. Not necessarily bad advice, but you think somebody gives you an idea and you think it's a good idea. You follow it and then you burn your fingers or you struggle. And then somebody else comes along and you think, that's a good idea. And then the publisher will say to you, no, it's not a book. Books don't sell anymore, which is right. You know, everything is electronic. So the same thing happens to players. They get advice. Somebody says to them, listen, this club wants you. You know, you can go to Japan and earn a bucket load of money, but you got 2 years left in your contract. What are we going to do? And then you try and find something in your contract. And this is what happened. Something in the contract, which they think is a loophole, and try and get the player out of the contract and say, this is wrong with the contract, or this is what we can do. And it didn't work. In this case, it didn't work. And the player is going to stay there until his contract runs out. But what is it that achieved is that it's got the union's backup and it's got certain officials' backup. And the people who control the purse strings are the people who's going to put their foot down. And you've got their backs up. And now it can lead to animosity between administration and the player. And the issue is, if you speaking to the wrong administrators, you're speaking to maybe upset the coach, or you maybe upset the director of rugby, that will stay. The agent will always be unpopular. And like you rightfully said, some agents are not welcome at Ellis Park, some agents are not welcome in Durban, and some agent has got very limited access at Loftus, you know. So, yeah, some agents are running out of places to find players to take overseas.
So how does that work now? You know, my agent has now suddenly become a persona non grata, which means that it limits my options. I mean, are they contractually bound? I mean, how can I get out of it as a matter of interest?
Find yourself another agent. If your agent's not delivering, you say to him, listen, I'm done with the Stormers. I want to go somewhere else. And your agent can't find you a club, then you say to him, listen, let's call this a day. I don't think you know. So the contract that the player signs, that's the other spin-off. So the agents also sign contracts with the player. So you, my agent, I sign a contract with you, and that contract says I'm going to stay with you for 5 years, and I'm not allowed to do anything without your say so. So I can't go speak to Cape Talk. I can't go speak to 702. I only got to speak to Rugby Unfiltered, because that's where you get your money. So the agent then controls the guy. So that contract between the agent and the player is one aspect. Then the contract with the relationship between the agent and the unions is another aspect. And that's also a very sensitive subject. And it's, you know, it's a tricky maze to manage. And now, you know, you upset people in overseas, you know, because you promised them this player and suddenly they don't like you because you made promises that didn't come true.
Yeah, you know, you just mentioned that Rock Nation, for example, plans for rugby players' career after their playing days are over. But in many respects, rugby players are very good rugby players, but not very good business people, or they might be a little naive sometimes, and they listen to the advice of what they think should be a person knowing better, like an agent, and then they don't. And like Ben Jason's case, I mean, he's the one carrying the can for that kind of a thing. No? That I don't know. It sounds exactly. A bit of a problem to me.
Yeah, here's an interesting lesson. I was speaking to James Dalton at the moment. We're trying to get him on a podcast, and you know, we still haven't found a moment. But in between, we sat down for a coffee and we chatted. You know, so we chatted about what he's. Remember, they were the '95 team, were the guys who introduced. I mean, there was a whole fight with Louis Late, the late Dr. Louis Late, about the money and contracts, and you know how much they will get, what bonuses they will get. There was this whole fight with the team, and he said to me, the one player who we all know is Kobus Visser, who's doing very well for him. And he's got this whole massive brand that he's building up, Visnov, coffees and that. And well, it's now restaurants. It's not even just coffee anymore. You know, you can see that everywhere around the country. You know, and he's done very well for himself. So James said to me, Cobus did well because he started that while he was still playing. So that's what Rock Nation does. They help the players to set those kind of things up. So Cobus Wiese didn't wait till he was finished and then took his final paycheck and started a business. He started a business with the money that he earned while he was playing. It might not have been a lot of money back then because it was theoretically still amateur. But he used his money well. And that was a very clever move. And now that's the thing is also the players need to be managed in such a way and mentored in such a way by agents or agencies, not necessarily just an agent, but agencies, that they know that while you're playing, you're going to start building your future for post-rugby. And that's a very big subject. And I think a lot of players fall short there. That's what I said at the beginning. You know, some of these agents, and not all of them, but there are a small section or a small pocket of agents who do this. They're quite happy to just move the players around and make their money like that. Because players are expendable. You know, if one player is retired, you go fetches and another young player comes through. You know, you go to a Craven Week and see there's a really nice player. You speak to him, and new agents or young agents that come on the scene need to understand, first of all, their behavior in public, their behavior towards players. And they also got to understand that they need to look after the players from day one. So, you know, if I want to sign player Z from school X and I have to look after this player, so I have to make sure that he knows that if he gets injured, in fact, there's a catastrophic injury, and there are cases of this. We players had catastrophic injuries. They were very talented, playing under age group provincial rugby, and they look set for great things. Catastrophic injury, career ending. That player then needs to have something. So you need to get the players. First of all, you need to make sure that your player either studies or get a trade, so that if something happens, then he's got something to fall back on. And that's one of the big challenges for agents. You know, you can't just say, I'm going to move the player to this and we're going to make lots of money and say to the player, this is how we can. Those agents need to act as proper mentors for these players, especially from a young age. Your more senior players will know, and they'll find a well-established agent and they will have a relationship. But some players get stuck with agents that are not the greatest, and that creates a problem for the player down the line.
Talking about leaks, you know, I was watching the Bulls playing against the Dragons the other night, and I saw Tinus de Beer in action. I mean, that guy is a machine, and he was well on his way to come back to the Bulls, and then it fell through because apparently, from what I've been hearing, is that it was leaked too soon. Why would agents leak this kind of information, or they're trying to prevent something from happening? Some other agent may be leaking it, because the Bulls were, like I said, they need a backup fly-off with Pollard being a Springbok, going on Springbok duty, the cupboard being a little bit bare, and then it fell through. Now Curvin Bosch has now apparently been finally signed, but we've known about it for weeks. Why do those leaks happen? Yeah. What's the thinking behind it?
Agents try and increase their players' profile. That's happened. I'm not saying it happened in this case, in Tinus de Beer's case, but the leak happened too soon. And you can't blame the media. So yeah, I'm going to put my journalist hat on. If you get a good story, Tinus de Beer's going to the Bulls. It's a good story.
Big story.
You know you can trust the agent or the person that's leaking it to you. You're going to write it. You're not going to blow your cover. You're not going to reveal your source. Because you burn your source once, you burn all your sources, I can guarantee you. So you protect your source. But you're still going to write the story because you know that if somebody has spoken to you, somebody has spoken to somebody else as well. So now you're in a race to, you know, when is the right time? You know, do I write it tomorrow? Do I hold on to Friday? And then Thursday somebody writes it and you said you had the story for, you were holding on because somebody asked you to hold on and somebody else jumped the gun. So I'm not saying it's what happened here, but this has happened and it will happen in the future as well. Is that as a journalist, when you get a story, you're most likely to write it, unless you've got a relationship and you trust the guy and you know that it's not going to go anywhere else.
Yeah, well, that leaves it open to manipulation. I've got a fly-off that I want the Bulls to sign. So I know here that they want to sign Tinus de Beer, so I leak it. So that those negotiations go awry, so that now my player can be in line for a contract. Kind of, I'm saying it's a bit cynical, maybe, but it's a
That's possible.
possibility. Yeah,
It's possible, but the converse could also be possible. You leak it because you want to know your current player, your fly-off's current club is busy talking to him, and suddenly they read that, oh, he's about to sign for the Bulls, and then hold on a second,
his value goes up. Yeah. That makes sense.
So it cut both ways. So, and again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying this is what happened in Tinus de Beer's case, but Tinus de Beer is a classic case of where information gets out into the public domain. It gets into the media too early, and it can damage the players' chances of moving back to South Africa. However, it got out, and you please don't blame the journalist that did it, because he's doing his job.
Of course it is.
That's what you get paid to do.
No, of course, I know. And I mean, we all know who I'm talking about. And if he doesn't write it, then we don't believe it. That's just the way it is. Let's just talk about some player movements briefly while we're at it. You mentioned Grant Williams now confirmed going to Japan. We're not sure where he's going, but he's now going definitely. Even Van Zyl, we mentioned earlier, from Saracens being lined up to replace him. What is the relationship between the Sharks and Saracens? There is a link there. Just explain that to me a bit.
The Cheetahs have got that with a Welsh club. I think they've got it with Japan, Toyota, through Toyota. So these hemisphere, cross-country relationship do exist. So if the Saracens has got a couple of players who's not getting much game time, a couple of academy players that they need to get some game time, they know that the Sharks have got a junior team, under 20 team. So these guys can register in South Africa and get some under 23 game time. That cross-pollination exists. Saracen needs a good scrum half, or they need a good wing or a good fly off, and there's a spare flyer floating around in Durban. That player will be Saracens will be able to lean on that player. So that's the reasoning behind it. I know it sounds very simplistic. It's probably a bit more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it. They just exchange players, have a relationship with each other, and it says, a coach can come across. So John Dobson went to France and he spent a week or so with France, and he sits in Toulouse's meetings, and he sits in and he sees how they do stats, and so he learns from that. He grows from that. So it's not just about, we got some great secrets, you want to see our secrets. It's not about that. It's about growing the game across the globe and sharing your information. You can always hold back what you need. If you know that you're going to discuss something that's very sensitive, then you will say to them, listen guys, we've got a difficult situation here, can you give us 10 minutes, and then they'll deal with that. But it happens. Like I said, Cheetahs have got the league with the Welsh.
Ospreys. I remember Victor Seke went to play there. John Rudolph played for Ospreys at some sort of an exchange. But isn't there some sort of a common shareholding maybe with Saracens as well? There's a strong South African connection with Saracens. Brendan Venter is going to take over there as head coach or director of rugby. I'm not sure which one. There is a link there.
So Brendan Venter was involved in the Sharks at some stage, or assistant. So Brendan Venter is a very curious case. Just off the cuff, I'm sorry. He's got his practice in Strand, Somerset. So he's got his practice there, and that's his full-time job. But he advises. He comes in his advisory capacities. He helped at Western Province a little bit. He helps here and there. So he doesn't go there and coach there for months on end. He goes across for a couple of weeks and help and give advice and look into the systems. So he doesn't per se coach. And I think he was similar at the Sharks. He is more advisory capacity, and then he returns to his practice in the Strand and makes sure that grows. So that is the reality of that. It's a very different scenario, and I think it's that type of exchange. So when a coach goes across or comes from, we've had that Australian coach that helped at the Stormers. He looks at the system. He looks at how the players, as John Dobson explained, he looks at how the players contest for the ball, but not necessarily just jump. He doesn't just everybody thinks it's so simplistic. You teach a player to jump and he's suddenly going to go higher than everybody else, and the Storm is going to win all the balls. That's not what happens. What happens is when that player slaps the ball down, or what happens post collecting the ball. So when the ball gets loose on the ground, that area around the ball, where the two, because you now can't block. So now you're going to find another way of protecting yourself. So that area around the ball, where the two players are going to land, or where the player is going to land, how do you protect that? If the player doesn't control the ball, how do you make sure that the opposition doesn't get a quick turnover and your defense is not?
That's transition. Yeah. Brendan is actually going to join Saracens full time as director of rugby. I checked it now from the start of the next season. He's taking over.
Okay.
So he's going to England. He's not just going to.
Maybe there's it'd be worth watching some of the press conferences there, because they could be interesting.
Do you remember that famous one where he just said yes? Yeah, it was so funny.
Yeah.
Anyway,
he made it as a joke. He made it as a joke because he saw somebody else in America do it, and he thought it was a great idea. And it got him into hot water.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was watching it now when I confirmed that appointment. I saw the video come up again as one of those things under his name. So interesting. I'll actually put that link up here for people to go have a look at it. It's so funny. Anyway, other notable signings. Gerwin Bosch now being confirmed for the Bulls. Takir Abrams, as far as I know, is definitely coming. Andrew Liebenberg is coming. Any other player movements that you're aware of that might be in the wings, or some whispers that you're hearing?
Not significant. There's all sorts of things about. I know there's the confirmation of the prop that's going to the Lions.
Juan Venter.
Yeah. So, but no, not significant stuff that I'm aware of. I think that the ones that we're aware of is already all in the public domain.
Okay, but is there any wings on the Stormers shopping list so that Damian Willemse can go back to his proper position of either 12 or 15? They need a wing or two there.
Yeah, the problem is that they've got good wings, but they're all injured. Siabella is a really good wing, but he's shame. I mean, he's had a rough time. I mean, I'm actually very fond of him as a person and as a player, but he's just had a rough time with injuries. And so it's difficult when your budget, first of all, when your budget's not as big as say a Sharks or a Bulls, who are already also shrinking their budget because the benefactor don't have empty indefinite pockets. He's going to start looking after himself as well. So with a limited budget, you can't just go and buy another player. In the good old days, you used to get that Fijian that cost them a Currie Cup final. You bought him for a season and stuff like that, but you can't. I don't think it's possible to do that anymore because the budget doesn't allow that. So he's working on a specific budget, and it's not free for all. It's not as readily available as people think it is.
I was wondering about that. I mean, in France, Toulouse is effectively a team of test players from many different nations. Why does that not happen in South Africa? Why don't Fijians come play in South Africa? I'm sure they're not going to be that expensive. I mean, it's exciting to have a couple of Fijian wingers on the cheap, maybe have a nice little working holiday over here in South Africa. Is there any rules against that, or is it just not viable or feasible?
Well, you got to register for a competition. So to play in the URC, you got to register to play in the URC. So then you got to get the guys who are going to play him a salary. So even if you get him on a junior salary or a small salary, it means it's a small salary that you don't have for a local player. So the obvious answer is go look in the club system. Maybe there is a wing floating around there somewhere that you can use. But you also need somebody for that player to come in. You need him from the beginning of the season. Now, because of the way the things are structured, you can't just bring in the rookies all the time because you're playing in the URC, you're playing in a Champions Cup. So it's different competitions. It's almost international competition. So getting a guy from the Fijians, he might be fast, he might be strong, but will fit to the Stormers culture. Will he get homesick very quickly and cause a disruption? So it's not as simple as just saying, let's go get a couple of Fijians and let them play here. They have to register for the competition, and if he's on your books, when he's no longer available, you have to deregister him and get another player on. So it's not as simple as just let's go get a couple of players.
There goes my R1 million brainwave. Anyway, Jan, thank you for that. We had a couple of technical challenges today. I appreciate your patience and look forward to next week, man. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Always welcome.